So, with fall camp starting this week for the defending national champions, the Alabama Crimson Tide, there's a lot I want to get into about things I'm really interested in with fall camp, and I cannot wait to talk about it. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I really want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you think that the Alabama Crimson Tide and Nick Saban are destined to take another first-year starting quarterback to the college football playoffs? Let me know what you're thinking there, and then let me know who you're really intrigued by with fall camp starting. Cannot wait to hear from y'all. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content, and you don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed that content, be sure to like and comment down below because those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. But with all of that being said, let's hop straight into this and let's talk about the offense first, because I think most eyes around the Crimson Tide fandom are going to be peering into that offense, and deservedly so. When you lose so many pieces and so many quality depth pieces from one offense, I think it's only natural that people are going to be a little bit intrigued and questioning how you're going to recover. Fortunately for the Crimson Tide, there is so much talent everywhere, it's honestly a little bit head-spinning, and I want to start first and foremost with the offensive line. Doug Marrone coming in, I think, is going to be a solid addition to this staff. I've talked about that before, but the Crimson Tide are in a position right now where they have a lot of talent along this offensive line, and it may be a unit that experiences some growing pains, but as we heard from Nick Saban, one of those offensive line positions, there were two up for grabs. One of them looks to be filled already, and that's awesome heading into fall camp that you already have an idea of an individual stepping up. That only means there's one more position left, and a lot of talented dudes going to be going at that position, including two freshmen in Brockermeyer and J.C. Latham, both of which five-star guys, both of which top 10 players in the nation. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on, is the offensive line, because everything starts there. Past the offensive line, a position group that I've talked about here very recently, the running backs. And I didn't shy away from, I think this is the deepest unit of running backs in the nation from top to bottom. Not one of the running backs ranked outside the top 200 players in the nation coming out of high school. All of the running backs in this room are former top 10 running backs, and three of the five running backs that are going to be vying for carries, of the five that are really going to be pushing, three of those five are former five-star athletes coming out of high school. So when you look at it like that, the Crimson Tide running back room is unbelievably talented, but if I had a name I wanted to watch for when fall camp and practices really begin, it'd be Kamar Wheaton, and let me explain. With the loss of Keelan Robinson, the Crimson Tide are still one of the few institutions that could lose a running back of that talent level and still be looking around thinking, well, we still have so many guys, how are we going to spread the ball around? That's a really rare thing to have. But what Kamar Wheaton offers is unbridled speed. This kid right here can straight fly. And that's going to be something that is very interesting to see how the offense utilizes that speed, especially with the loss of Robinson. And it's only going to become more intriguing if he comes in and shows from day one that he has elite ability catching the ball out the backfield. If he has that, I think we're going to see Kamar Wheaton sooner rather than later, but he's not the only one. If Trey Sanders can get healthy, I talked about the other day when we were talking about the running backs that Trey Sanders has such a unique skill set. He's absolutely a name to watch, but I have no questions at all in the Alabama running back room. My only intrigue is which guys are going to be stepping up, because there are so many talented names. The quarterback has pretty much well been spoken for in Bryce Young, and I've been on the Bryce Young train for quite some time. I think he's a phenomenally talented young man, and I think he is in store for a really big season. He has really quick release, a really intriguing quarterback when you look at what he's able to do from both inside the pocket and outside the pocket. We saw in A-Day, he has an uncanny ability to keep the play alive, but he doesn't run for the sake of running. He runs for the sake of keeping his eyes downfield to get the ball to one of the unbelievable playmakers that the Crimson Tide have. And that really steps me into the next area where we really need to keep an eye on, because I don't know, absent injury and knock on wood, there's going to be too much intrigue at the quarterback position. I think we're all going to be very interested in how Paul Tyson's coming along, and specifically Jalen Milroe. And if you go back and watch the quarterback video where Quarterback Spotlight and I broke down the quarterback situation for the Crimson Tide, we were both saying months and months and months ago, Jalen Milroe is going to shock some people and he's going to turn heads. That kid is really, really solid. So he's also a name I think we need to watch for when fall camp begins to hear how he progresses, because I think that both Bryce and Paul Tyson are probably further along, which makes absolute sense. They've been in a college system. He's a true freshman, Milroe is at least, but he has a really unique skill set, one that we need to keep an eye out on. But with the quarterbacks being spoken for and Bryce Young looking to be the leader of this team, the wide receiver position for the Crimson Tide is one that the more and more I think about it, the more and more excited I get. When you look at this wide receiver room, there are so many options. And one thing I think that Alabama is really lucky with is that John Mechie can play inside and outside. He can really, really hurt a defense from multiple positions within the receiving lineup, which opens up opportunities everywhere else. It's because of that reason right there that I think the Crimson Tide are in a position where they can optimize the talent in that wide receiver room for the team they're playing that week. That is to say that I think we're going to have a more receiver room by committee. And when you look at the Alabama wide receiver room, there's a lot of names I think are going to make headway throughout the fall to be able to see the field during the season. Guys such as Trayshawn Holden, a name that was really, really solid during A-Day. True freshman Ajayi Hall is someone I think everybody's going to be watching because he was that impressive during A-Day, and he's someone who I absolutely think will be vying for time. Jamison Williams I think is in for a big season. The staff has been really thoroughly impressed with him from the summer 7-on-7 workouts. From all reports we've read, he's a name I am really interested to see how he continues to progress throughout this fall cycle. But with that all being said, the last position group on offense I really want to talk about is the tight end group. And the tight end group, I even made an entire video just dedicated to how I think that could be a real catalyst for this Alabama offense. When you look at it, a really solid running back room and a really solid tight end room can lend itself to a new quarterback and an inexperienced quarterback. Luckily for Alabama, Bryce Young is infinitely talented, but because you have solid talent at the other two positions at tight end and running back, you can really ease Bryce into this situation. And the interesting thing with Alabama's tight end room is they have one of the most versatile tight ends in the nation in Jaleel Billingsley. This guy right here is going to be an utter mismatch come the season. Mark my words. And the interesting thing is the Crimson Tide may even have a few 12 personnel packages where they put Billingsley like he's a wide receiver and the defense has to defend it as if it's an 11 personnel. That's the type of versatility Jaleel Billingsley has. The same type of versatility I talked about with Najee Harris and how he allowed the offense to move fluidly between different formations. J. Bill has that same versatility. I mean, goodness gracious, we saw a tight end returning kickoffs. That's how talented he is. That's how athletic he is. He is going to be utilized, and I cannot wait to see it. On the defensive side of the ball, I think this is the area where a lot of Alabama fans are incredibly excited for. As much intrigue as there is around the offense, and deservedly so, the defense returns so much talent. And not only returning so much talent, but so many young guys contributed to that defense last year, whether it was Brian Branch, whether it was Malachi Moore, whether it was Will Anderson, and those guys now have a year under their belt in one of the most tumultuous years we have in recent memory, and that's only going to lend itself to this year because they earned experience the hard way. But the Crimson Tide have one of the best nickels in college football in Malachi Moore. I mean, Pro Football Focus graded him as a top 5 DB returning, and even said that through the stretch, he was their second or first highest rated nickelback in college football, and that was even including a rough outing against Florida, which, how can you blame Malachi Moore? As a true freshman, he was asked to cover 2 different first rounders. I think most people would struggle with that, and even then he held his own pretty well, and I think it would be a very positive learning experience for him in that game because of the guys he went up against. Both Tony, pick 20 in the NFL draft, and then we all know Kyle Pitts, what a mismatch he was last year. I think the SEC is glad that he is no longer in it so that we can progress because he is that big of a mismatch. But the defense has so many names to it. The one area in the secondary I think a lot of people are going to be looking towards is towards that cornerback 2 spot with Josh Jobe sliding over to cornerback 1. Jalen Armour Davis has progressed very nicely. He's someone in the past the Crimson Tide staff have spoke very highly of. He's just had a lot of injuries and had an unfortunate go at it. But behind him are really talented dudes, which is something that's going to make everybody in the room better, them competing with each other. Iron sharpens iron, no doubt about it. but Jalen Armour-Davis can't take a day off because Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold are that talented. If any of these guys take a day off, those two dudes are going to be knocking at the door, and those two dudes are going to be a problem in the future for the SEC. Mark my words. Those guys are unbelievably talented, and I think we'll actually see both of them this year. That's how good they are. If we look at the front for the Crimson Tide, only losing Christian Barmore and Dylan Moses is going to pay massive dividends to this team because so much experience returns. And then you look at what you get in. Henry To'oTo'o from Tennessee, which Nick Saban said they identified as what they believe to be one of the most talented players in the SEC in its entirety, and now he's a member of the Crimson Tide. Even past that, you have a lot of talented inside linebackers. Jalen Moody has looked the part. Deontay Lawson was unbelievably impressive in A-Day. I mean, I couldn't speak enough about him. He was that impressive, especially for how young he is. He's a name that's going to really wreak havoc in the future. But I think as much talent is in the inside linebacking room, it's those edge rushers that most people are really, really waiting to see. And how can you blame them? Will Anderson, in my opinion, is one of the top college football players coming into this season. I think he's a top 5 edge rusher, and that was all off of a true freshman campaign. I think that he is massively underrated per a lot of outlets, and he's going to show the college football how talented he is this year because now he gets a full offseason. He knows how to work out. He has the full offseason to learn and to kind of reflect on last season and apply the lessons that he's learned in the offseason to the game scenarios that he's experienced last season. Will Anderson is going to be a problem, and opposite him, Chris Allen came back, and if he is able to put together a season like he did last year, his draft stock is going to massively rise because he's going to be able to do a really nice season consistently. But if he just repeats the season he has last year and Will Anderson continues to improve, that's a lot of sack production. That's a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks. Something that's only going to benefit that secondary. And then even past Will Anderson and Chris Allen. I mean, goodness gracious, you have 5-star Drew Sanders. You have 5-star Chris Braswell. Drew Sanders didn't get to play in A-Day, but he was called upon last season multiple times, so we know that the staff likes what they see in him and thinks that he has a future at being incredibly disruptive. And if you haven't seen his highlights, put on his high school tape. Wow, that kid is unbelievably athletic. Chris Braswell, we did get to see in A-Day, and all he proved is that he's next. The Crimson Tide edge rushers are unbelievably talented, and even the interior guys, there's a lot of names. DJ Dale, Tim Smith, Phildarian Mathis, Lebrian Rey. A lot of guys are going to be looking to make a name for themselves this year, but Lebrian Rey is a name that I think we should all keep at the forefront of our minds because if he puts together a solid season, then it will massively increase his draft stock, and that's exactly what we're hoping for him. And all of this isn't even to begin to talk about the 2 new 5-stars who came in over the summer, in Damon Payne and then Dallas Turner, who should shake things up, at least that's what we hope, and add even more competition to this room. The Crimson Tide are really talented, and I think there's a bit of a misconception that because Alabama lost so much talent, they might take a step back this year. And even if the offense is to take a step back this year, I think one thing we need to put into perspective is taking a step back from an all-time offense is still an incredible offense. Taking a step back from one of, if not the greatest offense of all time in college football is still an unbelievably potent offense, and that's what I think you could be featuring very soon in the season. I think all the talent is there for the Crimson Tide, and I think a lot of people are going to be incredibly impressed when they see these young guys making plays. I cannot wait to hear from y'all. Fall camp cannot get here quick enough, and I am unbelievably excited for the season to start. Hop down to the comments. Let me know if you think Alabama is destined for the playoffs again, featuring yet another first-year starter, something Nick Saban has made a specialty at, and let me know which players you're most excited about hearing about during fall practices. That's it. See ya.